Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. I haven't done any scenes lately. I don't recall on some of the more shimmery types of papers, I don't know, I guess they call them iridescent, I guess, but the metallics, these ones are, or this one is Stardream, Lapis, Lazuli. There's different brands of papers that have that similar type of finish on them. I really love that shimmery look to them and the way that they reflect light. And it's one of the things that got me really experimenting with a lot of different types of papers. It's because I had a collection of these shimmery types, light reflective types, and I wanted to use them after, I don't know, collecting them for I don't know whatever it was at the time, 20, 25 years or so. And I thought I would use them with some of these new images here. Okay, so one of my favorite colors that I just happen to kind of play around with over the years is the Lapis Lazuli, a darker toned card. But again, like other types of surfaces, you might not be able to see anything on it if you just stamp on it. Naturally, it's dark, so if you stamp on there in a dark ink, it's not going to show very much. And that's the same thing with things like, oh, the really loud surfaces like a printable holographic sticker paper. If we don't put something down on these types of papers and we stamp on them in black, you just wouldn't be able to see anything. So we need to do some what I call blocking out or whiting out, just as a base layer foundation for our other stamps on there. Hello, Zale and Linda. Happy Friday to you both. Hope you had a nice week. I have inked up my Brilliance black and white pads here because I plan on using a good amount of the white to block out some areas on here. And the black, because we need that to be pretty thick when we apply that over the top of the dried white ink that's been applied down here. It might even be a little bit moist, so, you know, don't make it super sloppy, juicy, but have a good amount in there. These two types of color, well, these two colors right here, but the same type of ink, they are water-based pigment inks, so they'll go on thick on here, and the water-based aspect of it will allow your inks to dry on the surface, which we need to do. We need to happen, but it also will adhere to these surfaces like this just fine. If you're using a metallic cardstock that isn't printable, you know, it will dry on those types of surfaces, but you need to spray seal them down, okay? But the things like the Lapis Lazuli, I don't, the Stardreams in general, I don't find too much of an issue with the Brilliance inks adhering to it, okay? So, hello, Cynthia and Sherry, how are you? Okay, let's give this a try here. I haven't done this for a while, so I was gonna like just kind of look over one of my own videos, you know, that I've done in the past, because I was thinking, I can't remember what I do after I lay my colors down, or my foundation coat, and then stamp over the top of it. It's like, what did I use? Did I go in and then did I add flesh in more areas or something like that with the cotton ball? Um, I don't remember, but anyways, I didn't have time to watch, so we'll just see what comes up here. Okay, so we need to have a little bit of an idea of what we're going to do here. Let's do a vertical portrait composition. Let me lay down this little creek here. Maybe it's going to be flipped over this way. But then I'll put like a cabin right in here, okay? So, that being said, we need to do some whiting out down here of where our imagery, our main imagery, is going to go. Now, if we lay some white down in here, I'm not going to do it completely, because I like the look of it better with some of the paper showing through, okay, because it'll look like shadows and it'll be a little bit less regular. I don't want just solid white down here. Hello, Janet, how are you? Debbie, good to see you. Hello in Ohio. Okay, so this is where my main imagery is going to go. We have a cabin and this little kind of winter creek here, okay? So I'm going to have some snow coming up here, then we'll have another tree up here, and I think I'll put like some kind of little moon up here or something like that. And I don't know exactly where this is going to go, you know, by the time I get everything stamped out. I mean, I can have a pretty good idea, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up some of that white back in here so that it looks like some clouds, okay? That way we don't have to be really precise about the placement of this white pigment ink, and it makes it really easy. You don't have to do like mark things off or something like that and mask it off like with a negative mask or something like that and get that ink down there. You could do something like that. It wouldn't take a huge amount of time, but I like to kind of free form it a little bit more. So we're just applying like this. If you haven't done this type of application process before, and your inks are super juicy on here, like mine's pretty juicy this time. I'm usually working with a little bit of a drier ink, so I'm not getting blobs. But what I'm doing is I'm, by the way, this is 100% cotton ball, okay? Just don't use the synthetic type. I find that I'm fighting the applicator when I do something like that. But what I'm doing is I'm going for these kind of softer types of applications, or just thinner applications. A lot of times people, when they do this, they get really frustrated because their inks are like super juicy, because we hardly ever use our white pigment ink. Unless you guys are, I don't know. I find that most people don't, so that when they start applying it, it's like, oh my God, I'm getting blobs everywhere. And that, yeah, Kevin made it look like really easy. They say in their comments, he makes it look so easy. But I know exactly where they're coming from. It's just like they're getting blobs like that, you know, and they're like, oh my God, this is like, I can't blend this out, okay? So you just kind of use a lighter touch. Now, it's a lot easier on the Lapis Lazuli here, because it's, if we're doing this on like a matte paper, you can do that too, but it's going to be more absorbent. And if I could do something like that, it might really soak into the paper, and it wouldn't be as easy just to blend out like that, okay? But you can do it, but you just kind of apply it in a much more, I guess, methodical, kind of targeted fashion, you know? And I use a much drier kind of applicator so that it's applying less. But you can see here where I'm just touching this right here, and it's, you know, where I have my fingers here, it's like actually removing ink. So you can see it's not drying so fast on our card that we can't manipulate it and move it around a little bit. And we're going to have a lot of imagery in here too, so you don't have to worry about like a really smooth application or you know, where a uniform. You don't have to go for a uniform application of it. Okay, so let me just take a look at this again. That. And let's see what this cabin. Okay, now see that cabin right there. I don't have very much of a, like a cloud formation above it. So let's extend this out a little bit more. And let me see if I can go for kind of a softer, more see-through, less, you know, less opaque application of it. So I don't know if you could see it there, where there's less ink right there and more of it down here. It's where that cloud just kind of dissipates as it transitions into the sky area like that. Okay, I think that should be good enough. Let me get the gist of it again here. Let's go with this, and you know, maybe a couple of these trees like this. Or do we go with the taller? Yeah, let's go tall and bigger and smaller. Something like that. All right. Let's get these stamped out there. This feels weird that, I got that background there so fast. I'm thinking, am I missing something here? I guess it's, I inked up my pad, so it really went very quickly. I don't know if I used to use this little twirly motion either, which I've just started to do, I don't know, I think recently, and that seems to work really well. Okay, let's, in terms of setting your, if you haven't done landscape stamping before, I usually just go for my larger stamps, like a big foundation stamp. It doesn't always happen that way. Like if I have like some little thing, like I want some kind of like a deer to go in here, you know, and I have a really specific area where it's going to go, then I might stamp it first or something like that, or, you know, really keep it in mind when I'm composing around it. And that, you know, it could be the smallest little element, but just in general, if you kind of go for your larger elements, your bigger kind of foundational pieces, it's easier to kind of fill in with smaller ones around it. It's like packing a box or something like that. Let's see, what month is October? How's the weather in Ohio? We used to go out to the, I've never been to Ohio in October. I can't remember when the Akron convention used to be, but I think it might have been March or so. We used to do the Akron, Ohio show. Or was it April? It might have been April. I'm trying to think of what's the circuit of conventions that we used to do. And one time, what I started doing is the Akron, Ohio show was Saturday, Sunday. And then what I started doing after certain shows was we started getting on like the last flight of the nights. And that would have been out of Cleveland. No, we took off out of Akron, actually. Or sometimes we go into Cleveland. It depends on what flights I can get and the prices back then. But I'm holding this down here a little bit longer because I want more of this ink to transfer. And as it starts setting up a little bit more transfers on this paper, okay? Sometimes if you're working with stays on something, you can't hold for too long because it dries while you're holding it down. If you don't lift off before that ink transfers, sometimes it's like it dried on the stamp and you're lifting the ink off with the stamp. But the brilliance on these iridescent ones are really, you know, easy to do. Easy to transfer, easy to stamp, and things like that. Okay. We have that right there. Okay, as I do this, I'm kind of starting to remember what I do on these pieces. Like I want a little bit like of a lighter little ridge line on these just to develop the volumes on this little area in here. It looks kind of flat right now, so we'll develop the volumes with some additional white pigment ink on there. Oh yeah, but one time, driving back, man, I think I think it was in April or something like that. Man, I hit some snow driving back up to Cleveland, and I just don't drive in the snow, like ever. We don't go skiing or something like that into the mountains into California. But boy, that was white knuckling it there. But I was proud to say that I made it to the airport where a lot of people were kind of like in the center meridian. Where they, you know, they just drove off the road on it, you know. All right, cabin. All right. I didn't hold that down as long. It's not as large of a stamp. And yes, that's my cleaning method right there. If it's water-based ink, I don't know. I just dab things off, and I find that's usually sufficient. It doesn't hurt the stamps, you know, with water-based media on there. Especially if you're going to be stamping, you know, that image in black most of the time. Hello, Linda. Oh, I already said hello to Linda. Yeah. Using those two stamps together was going to be next move. They are natural pair. Yeah, yeah. I brought out this this whole set, so I wasn't quite sure of what I was going to do in terms of the composition. So I knew I'd probably be using like one of these, or if not both of them, on these two pieces of lapis. All right, here comes this tree right here. I'll go for a couple different impressions, or I'll use the smaller one. See, right now, things just don't stand out as much on here. So what we'll do is we'll be enhancing our lighting, and I'll bring it like a bright moon into the mix here, and that will kind of inform us as to the. We can use it as a reference as to how light to make our reflected light on our various objects in here. All of this is a little bit wet right now still. So I'll need to heat set that, but maybe we'll do the next composition and I'll wait for this to just air dry a little bit, and then we'll go back to this and I'll probably have to heat set it just a touch. Okay, now this tree, I could put it right here, but I think I want it a little bit lower, okay? So let's just mask off a little bit, like about like so. And we'll just put it on the other side of, you know, what would be the creek up this way. Okay, I masked that off. Yeah, I mean, you didn't really need to do it. I removed like an 1/8 of an inch, just because I didn't want this tree right here to be like roughly the same height as that one. I want it to go down a little bit more, you know, because it kind of creates this little sloping, I don't know, whatever, reference point. This seems like a little bare in here to me too, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to see if I can do this, okay? I'm going to really blot that off. I probably didn't remove enough ink, but I don't want to remove so much that I can't see it at all, but I'm going to try to transition this secondary impression right in here, so it's a little bit drier down here, a little bit less dry, and then it's moist up there, but it's, you know, secondary stamp moist. I'm going to put it right back in here. Let me see, let me remove a lot off the bottom. Yeah, it looks pretty good. See that? It looks like it's farther back in the distance, and then I just kind of wiped off some of that bottom portion of it. So you're just kind of wiping off a little bit, or dab it, you know, and then you kind of just keep dabbing there to create that little bit of a transition, and then see you get a little bit of the silhouette of that front tree. You can keep doing that. I can probably go for like a third back there if I really wanted to. Let me see if I could have. Yeah, okay. So the brilliance ink, you know, those pigment inks, there's still probably plenty of ink on the design, especially after you've stamped it into, you know, like a metallic like that. If I stamped that first impression onto a bare piece of just matte paper, it probably would have absorbed a lot of the moisture and the ink, where maybe you wouldn't be able to get like, you know, 3 impressions out of it. Hello, Rita. Good to see you. Thanks for checking out the live here. Glad you're able to jump in. We're working on a piece of Stardream Lapis Lazuli iridescent metallic paper. Okay. All right. Let's see. Was this the... This doesn't feel like the one I was using. It already feels kind of dry. It isn't, but... All right. Let's go for this right here. Where should I put the moon? Let me see. I don't want to go center. I think maybe rule of thirds type of thing. Let's go over here. Look at that. But like, so I'm going to try to transition this. Every time I say that, sometimes it transitions a little bit less than I thought because I have more ink on my applicators than I think I do. So what you do is you just get, you know, a little bit of a thinner layer like that. and kind of establish how opaque you want that lower portion, or dark in most cases, the way I do it. I usually have things a little bit bolder up top, then it transitions down below. On this one, I'm going to stay up top here a little bit longer, because if I go down like that, it might be there might be too much ink on this still. And then what you do is you just come back in and add a little bit more up top. When I'm doing this with the dye basting, sometimes I think I'm creating a little bit of a transition, but it's like, oh, it came out completely uniform. It's because those inks are just so wet, you know, and thin, so they spread around a lot faster. Okay, this one's not too bad. Yeah, okay, it needs more. It's like a little bit transition, but okay, okay, here we go. This is better. Okay, there we go. Something like that, okay? So it's like lighter up top there, and I want to kind of match some of that. It's lighting, but it's opacity too. It's the thickness of it. I want to put some of that down in this area so that everything else looks a little bit more mottled. So the moon is a little bit mottled. It's going from light to dark, and I want to do the same thing in some of these areas down here. I also have my white pastel pencil, so if you don't feel comfortable kind of doing this type of thing on there, you might be able to go in with white pastel pencil. And it's getting a little bit of an application here. See, I can see where the specific lines are on the design, so you can do that. Where you know, when you're just kind of filling out that background foundation coat of the pigment ink with that, you know, there's no telling where these specific areas are going to be. These little slope, you know, I don't know, whatever you call those. It's a little, you know, the variations, the high points of that little area like that. But see, that pastel pencil is applying a little bit, but I think it needs to dry. But this will draw on the Lapis Lazuli with no problem, okay? But the thing is that you're doing it over the top of dry brilliance white ink, so it might not apply because you're losing some of the tooth of this paper, okay? Hello, Bonnie. Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, so let's, well, I want to work on this one here. I was going to do another one and wait for this to dry a little bit. I really want to get those mottled areas in there after I was talking about it. So this is still pretty wet. I don't know if you can see where it's kind of shiny. Okay, let's go with that. It might still be a touch moist, though. All right, so let's see. These slopes are fairly smooth, so I won't go for too rough of an edge here. I do like to have it a little bit softer like this than, say, cutting a piece of paper out. All right. Sometimes I think that looks a little bit harsh, you know, but I guess you could, or if you have some like French curves or something like that, you can cut some, you know, different types of angles on there. But I usually just go with a paper towel like this. Okay, so I'm placing that right along that ridge like that. And what we'll do is we'll try to transition this area just like we did with the moon, but just in a really abbreviated way. Well, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. You can always add more. So just a little bit at a time. it's not quite like adding salt and cooking or something like that, where you can't really just take it out. But like if I added too much in here, I can kind of, go back in with a black pencil or something like that, or like a deep blue pencil and darken up some of this if I made it too light. Well, let's go with that. Oh, some of that black there, I didn't dry it enough, so it's picking up a little bit of that black right there. But I don't know, that looks okay to me. Let's go with this. I'm looking for an angle on my paper towel here. All right, so you have that, like that. See how it's starting to capture that light, and you can just do that with all these little hills here. Or not hills, I don't know, this sloping area of the, the water side, whatever, bluff. Okay, like that, right? And let's go for this last one right here. Some of that, part of that's going to be in shadow. So I put it right there. I left a little bit, a bit darker right here where maybe that tree would be casting a shadow. And then like right around in here, we can use some variation. I don't have like this real smooth kind of sloping area with a lot of area in here. So if I start putting in some of this in here, I might be covering up a lot of those rocks, but that might be, we might be sacrificing some of that, but I think it'll be a good thing to do that in here just to make it a little bit more consistent with the right side of the creek. And if we want to get some of these rocks back in there in full value, I can always take a black colored pencil and just color them back in. Or we can just stamp out something like the tiny rock small and reclaim some of that lightness. All right, something like that. And let's get this one right here. Oh, but going back to those Ohio, I miss doing that Akron show a lot when I stopped doing shows. That was a really fun show every year. Just a lot of energy there. Same goes for the Cincinnati show, Stamp Away. I didn't always do that one, but I'd make it back there periodically. After doing, I don't know, the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 inaugural, I think the inaugural show, and then for a couple years after that. But sometimes we just couldn't make it back to certain shows because my booths, my booth displays and everything like that were in transit somewhere. Okay, but see this right in here? See how this lighting on here looks in conjunction with that background cloudy effect. So you're kind of putting some of this type of texturing in the front of things so that you have it in the distance and then you have it close. So I always mention this, but it feels like it envelops the objects in a similar light. And when you do that type of thing, you create atmosphere. And I think it makes the pieces seem a little bit more dimensional that way. Amsterdam acrylic ink to paint on some of my stamps. We'll be trying them out after I'm done with the Christmas cards. That sounds cool. Okay, let's see here. Let me see if I can put on a little bit of this pastel pencil on the roof line right here, just to vary this roof a little bit. Yeah. So like that, let's put a little bit of lighting right there, and I'm smearing some of my ink here. I didn't dry it completely, okay? So when I'm doing these areas, I generally try to transition it. So I'm going from a little bit lighter over here to darker over here. So it goes lighter to darker, lighter to darker. You know what I mean? So it's not just like this one solid bar of a uniform application anywhere. So it's transitioning up here. Over here, there's some, but none on this side of the roof. You know, I'm just doing that because maybe it's a little bit closer to the moon. So, you know, it's all what you know, however many miles away from the moon. So you really won't see that, but you know, in the context of this one little scene here, you can kind of transition things around a little bit like that. Okay, now let's see. Let me try to pull out. Yeah, this is working right here. I didn't put too much. There isn't too much white pigment ink like down in this area, so it's really allowing me to use a good amount of the pastel pencil. Not in there. Let's see, right in here. Yeah, there we go. It's funny, I try to add more white to that, but it's making it darker because I'm scratching off some of the white ink that I already applied there, so yeah, I won't do that. All right, so see how it's kind of making it look a little bit more dimensional. See this? There's a lot of different ways you can approach this, but I'm just kind of doing it like this little waterside, you know, outlines right there. I'm just kind of adding a little bit more texturing like that to it. And where it'd be hard to get into like a really specific little area like that with the cotton ball, you know, no problem with the pastel pencil. That, okay, let me see. How about the trees? I'm hitting those areas on the trees that are light and represent the snow on them. So I'm just going in there, in that Lapis Lazuli field right in there. Well, it's some of the white pigment ink, but with some of that Lapis Lazuli showing through, I'm just going in there and making it even lighter with this. Yeah, this isn't a white colored pencil, it's a white pastel pencil. I don't think the colored pencil would be soft enough to apply in here, but you can give it a try. Go with that, like about like so. And everything in here is looking relatively soft right now, so what we'll do is we'll apply some sharpness with it, with this, okay? Now sometimes this is like too sharp, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to splatter paint this whole thing with some of the Dr. Martens bleed proof white paint, watercolor paint afterwards, just to put this whole other texturing over the whole thing like it's snowing. And then this application of white in here, which represents, I don't know, like reflected light. Hopefully that kind of integrates. If it looks kind of weird, you know, after I do it in here. So see some areas like that run in here where they're lighter up top and they go darker down below. So, you know, light to dark, you know, light to dark, light to dark. And these top areas where it's lightest, I'll kind of apply some of this. Like about like so, where it's the lightest. We have a bunch of ants crawling in our house right now. So I'm sitting around and I think I have ants crawling on me because I just saw them a few minutes before I came on this live stream. So if I keep going like this, you know what I'm doing. Or you know where that came from. All right, so see that right there? Just it's kind of giving that little shimmer. I think it brings a lot of areas to life by bringing in that really light textural element. And what you do is if you haven't used like a pen like this before, and especially kind of on a darker scene, this can really stand out. So you just put it like a few here and there and try to apply kind of, don't work just one area, all to get at one time and then move on to the next one, because we can overdo it because we're only focusing in on one tiny little area, like one square inch. And then sometimes when you take a look at it overall, it's like, oh my God, I added like way too much. Now I still do add way too much sometimes, but I'll usually go in and I'll add in some white pigment ink over the top of that, and then it kind of mellows it out a little bit. But yeah, it's really easy to kind of overdo this. It's not to the point of, you can't, do anything about it. Like on these little dots in here, if I was added way too much, I can take like a alcohol pen or something like that and I can tint them. I can color them with a little bit of tone. You can take a colored pencil instead of a blue dot. You can make it, a white dot, you can make it blue, something like that. All right, let's put some of this shimmery light on this creek here, be it, I don't know if the creek's iced over or if it's water, but either way, it could be shimmering, a little bit more of a shimmery surface like that. More reminiscent of probably what it would look like, with any kind of lighting on it. All right. It'd be interesting to put like a deer here or something. I do have that fox, but that fox is an open one. I don't know if it'll show up in here. All that texturing would show right through it. I'd have to go with something a little bit more solid. Let's do it. I have to do it before I splatter paint everything, because that little splatter paint is going to be kind of raised. And if I stamp something over it, like a solid silhouette thing, sometimes you can see those little dots where the, the Dr. Martin shows through. Right, I don't know, it gives it a little bit of texturing, which I do, I just ink over it again, but, I just assume not have to do that. Okay, this is really juicy. I really inked up my black pad a lot. Okay, let's do this here. I'm just going to wipe off the feet here really good, because it is snow. A lot of times I just wipe off a little bit of it, where some animal's like standing in grass or something. But this one's where it's actually standing in some snow, so we'll remove some of the ink off of it. That where it's like standing, whatever, 6-7 inches in the snow or something like that. It kind of creates a nice balance though, doesn't it? That, this thing's looking over that way. The moon's on the left side of the page, and you put something kind of facing inward, and it kind of balances things off a little bit more. We have the trees here too, but having something right there kind of creates a little bit of a counterbalance. Okay, Lapis Lazuli, it's a really opaque white watercolor paint. Does anyone do calligraphy? calligraphers use this a lot in their dip pens probably, or brushwork too. Those calligraphers with their brush lettering are amazing. Which I'm not, but my old boss at Stamp in the Hand, she was in the calligraphy association, so I knew some of those calligraphers and just the things that they can do. Really amazing. I add a little bit more than I always should with the splatter painting because it's just so fun to do. And before I started doing it on cards, the last time I did that, was like kindergarten. So there's a lot of makeup. Okay, now see in here, I would probably add a little bit more white in here. I would do, I would add in a little bit of fog in here, okay, and mist. More reminiscent of that. I'd have it going up into the trees. But I want this to dry. And I don't feel like heat setting this right now. And that deer is going to be a little bit moist here, but I'll add on a little bit more of this kind of mistier look in front of the objects in here, and I think that'll finish off things really nicely. Maybe even bring some of it down in here or something. So anyways, but you can see what that splatter painted white looks like. And it really adds kind of a nice, it's a nice uniform texture in here too. And plus it's light on dark too. So it kind of creates a nice contrast. I mean, I use it just about on everything. It doesn't have to be something dark, of course. You see me splatter paint all the time, but yeah, it creates a nice additional layer, to give it some dimension. All right, let's see. Let's do another one right here. And let's see. What should we do here? I was thinking about the fences here. Let's do something I'm always doing, like rule of thirds. Let's do something more, kind of like dead center type of thing. I'll try to create what do they call it? Dramatic balance is that was one of my lessons in school that I always remembered from beginning drawing. They had us do this big he set up this big still life, our professor, and he I don't know, it was like this gigantic thing, towering high on this platform. It had chairs and all kinds of little props and stuff like that, and it went up into the air like, I don't know, 7 feet tall or something like that. And I think the counterbalance was like this chicken or something like that. So we did this thing, and he called it was a lesson in dramatic imbalance. And then with that same lesson, he had us do something dramatic balance, where there was, I don't know, there was like 2 chairs, and it was like a similar type of still life. Okay, this cabin's going to be up here. I think in order to use these 2 fences here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this little sledder guy, like this. Yeah, as he's going home after a whole day on the slopes. That's when we used to go home when I was a kid. It's when it's like getting dark, or it might already be completely night if we were out kind of exploring these areas around our house. These days people would freak out, And I probably would have with my kid, if he was out and just getting back like way after dark. Okay, so let's see here. So this whole area in here is going to be largely blocked out, okay? But like I said, when you have some of this paper showing through here, see that light, it's reflecting like in those darker areas in the shadows like that. So even if we're applying a lot of this background kind of snowy foundation and textures and clouds in the sky, with the reflective nature of these papers, you get a lot of it showing through. Like I said, you can do these types of things on a piece of matte, darker blue paper or something like that. It's just not going to be as reflective, okay? It's a good look, though. Um, but I don't know. I don't have too much of that. I have some of that paper. I had more metallics in my collection. I guess like a dark blue kind of matte paper wasn't exciting me, so I wouldn't buy it when I was at these different stores. I used to teach all over the place, so, and a lot of these stamp stores, they carried papers too, or I'd teach at a place that was a stamp scrapbook store, so, um, I don't know, the temptation was always there for me. Okay, let's see. There was a store in Bellingham, Washington. It's getting pretty close to British Columbia, Canada, but relatively speaking. But it was a Stampadoodle. I think one of the first rubber stamp stores in Washington State. And oh my God, what was the name of that store? Was it the Paper Source or something like that? They were, I think, like next door to them. I think there was like a building with two businesses, and one of them was Stampadoodle, and I think it was the Paper Source right next door. So it was a heck of a kind of a destination for stampers in that area. But anyone kind of within driving's distance, even if you're driving for a while, because you can hit both places at the same time, which I'm sure everyone did. I think that might have been where I picked up some of my first Stardream papers. All right, filling in like that. I think I'll make some areas a little bit more opaque though, so I won't have to kind of add it in later. Oh, one of the things about the Stardream papers, and it might be just kind of the metallic, the iridescent ones in general, is that, and I learned this, I don't know, a few years ago, but all of those papers don't take media the same way. Now, maybe certain colors do, but maybe just the metallic ones didn't, like the gold and the silver. I tried to do some similar effects. I don't know if it was this type of effect here or technique, but certain inks didn't take to those colors. And I seem to recall it was maybe the metallic specifically, gold and silver, when I tried to stamp on them in a similar way as the Lapis Lazuli, or I don't know what the name of this one is, Aqua or something like that. Yeah, it didn't take the ink. I think it was the black ink or something like that I tried on them. They were more they were less porous, okay, than the Lapis Lazuli specifically, but it might have been like some other ones too. I probably discovered it during like a live stream too. I was like thinking, okay, now you do this and this, and then I realized, oh, maybe we don't do that here. But yeah, that really surprised me. All right, I think that should be enough. I'm trying to go for a little bit of variation, like I said, where it's a little bit lighter in some areas than in others. And again, just for a little bit of reflective variety, you know, once I stamp the images out here. Okay, so it kind of looks like a little bit of clouds. I wonder, you know, I don't think I added enough of that. Let me see. Like that cabin's going to go right there. I need it a little bit lighter around on the rooftop there, so let's try to hit that a little bit more, or a lot more. I have a little bit of a path of light here, now that I think about it. You know, where that cabin is, and then I'm going to have the windows of that cabin will be maybe in the lighter area, and maybe down here it could be look like it's reflecting off of the snow or something like that. I'm talking about the lighting within the cabin here. You can go for the similar type of lighting scheme kind of as a foundation for a lot of different things. You know, you can have like a lake in here or something like this, and you have that light figure, a moon or something like that, and it can be like lighting down like that. All right, let's give it a try with, let's see, should I stamp? I should stamp this first, huh? It's more of a main image than the fences. The fences can go lower if I want to. Or of course that kid's going to be a really important focal point in there, so let's do it like this. Let's have a little bit of that going off the top right there. And again, it's going to be like this here. I guess I can go rule of thirds too, but I already put that line down there, so. My sensibilities, I tend to be more of a rule of thirds type of person, so you can see where I said I'm going to do it more symmetrically. I'm already kind of like fighting it and, you know, talking about rule of thirds here. All right. If you just joined in, that was the Brilliance White. And I'm going with a pretty thick impression of Brilliance Black over the top of it. Two colors that I'd really recommend to people. It's just a pigment ink, but it opens up the doors of a lot of different types of surfaces that might not accept a lot of different types of ink on them, specifically the metallics, the metallic cardstocks, the more iridescent ones like this. You might be able to stamp like a VersaFine Clair over the top of the water-based Brilliance applied on top of the, you know, this type of paper, and have it dry. Sometimes there might be certain types of metallic papers, the shimmery types, where that oil-based VersaFine Clair might not dry on them, though. I'm not sure. Like I said, some of these papers are a little bit more porous than other ones, so you'd have to test it out. But that being said, there probably wouldn't be any issues with utilizing Brilliance ink on most of those surfaces and having it dry at least. Again, you might have to spray seal it down, but it'll at least transfer. Transfer and dry. It might not adhere on certain types of papers. On the lapis, Stardream, Lapis Lazuli, no problem. I stamped these two fences a little bit lower, so I might have a little bit more room up here for something like those snowmen or something. Let me see here. Maybe I should stamp out the kid first. So if I stamp out that snowman too high on here, it might look like that, someone made like a 12-foot snowman or something like that. Or I guess it could be one of those inflatables. All right, and we'll go right here. I can stamp it just about anywhere within a half-inch area or something like that. Just don't stamp like a kid with its head in that imagery up there, okay? Because you won't be able to see the silhouette of their head if you stamp them too high up here, okay? And let's go like this. I'm going to blot this off once just to give a little bit of a lighter footprint kind of area. And let's see. We need some trees out to the side, I think. Let's do this. Let's ink it up and do that transition again right in here where I'm wiping off a good amount of the ink, okay? So it's going from dry to wet. And I'll wipe it off right off here because I'm going to go right in here in this area like that. And hopefully those trees right back there look like they're farther back in the distance. Which we didn't need to do. I mean, it could have been, like the same equal distance. I could have put it right, I could have put it right there and that would have been fine. But I think that gives the scene just inherently a little bit more depth. And then you ink up the other side right here. And I'll wipe off this side and down at the base a little bit like that. Maybe I'll wipe off even more here. And I'll put this one right over here. Like that, and you get this object right here that just, brings it out a little bit more in the foreground. Like I said, you can make it, equal, or you can do this too. Let's do this right here. So I've done this one really lightly stamped back there. Okay, so I wiped off a lot of this right down here and this side for that impression. Okay, but now I've just inked it up solid black right here. And let's come in here like this. I can go all the way if I want to, but let's leave a little bit of a gap right in here. And we'll put these trees right there. So see right there? If that was solid black all the way down, you wouldn't be able to see that impression like that quite as much. I've kind of given up on the space for the snowman. The snowman would kind of be a little bit more of a, you would compete for the attention, I think, visually of the slider. So let's just leave it out. And let's go with this other tree over here. Let's do the same thing like that. So again, it's a little bit more darker against something lighter in the background like that. And let's do this too. We have a lot of open space in here, and let's add in, instead of, I don't want to vary that too much with these types of lighter areas of snow. I might add some, but let's do this right here. This will give me a little bit of a head start in terms of texturing and shading, but it just happens really fast with the Tiny Rock small stamp, like about like that. And then let's heat set, and let's add in some little special effects to it. You can probably just splatter paint over that and it would look pretty cool too, but I want to add in a little bit of variation into this. That's a good question, Chris. I'll get to that right here. Did I say hello to Catherine? If I didn't, hello. I got lost in my scenes, so I couldn't remember. But yeah, Chris asked a really, that's a question that I think about periodically. Not so much in terms of what I'm using right now, but like, what if, another Blaze, disappears, or some other company that I happen to use. So luckily, at this point in time, Ranger's still around, okay? With the oxides, which I haven't used before. Not because I'm avoiding it or something like that. I just have so much other media. But the distress inks are really good. And then Tsukuneko, thank God they're still around, who makes the Brilliance pads, the Versifying Clairs, Memento, so, they're, though, just between those two companies, and I haven't used them before, but, I'm guessing they're pretty good as the Catherine Pooler ones I really liked. When I saw that, I think their pads have that foam type of material as opposed to the fabric one, which I'm a little bit more a fan of the foam type of pad, like, the Marvy pads and Vivid pads of old, if anyone remembers those. Hello to Sharita too. Those pads, I don't know, I find those foam pads really last a really long time. And I like the way that they, the ink from those types of pads transfers to the stamp a little bit more than the fabric ones. I use the fabric ones, I have them. But I think just in terms of my own preference, I really like that foam. Okay, so, those most of the pads, though, I find that they're, other than Marvy, okay, I find them to be pretty equal in terms of quality and consistency. In terms of like consistency, not in terms of, getting the same color, every time from a certain pad, but consistency in terms of the viscosity of them. Most of them are kind of thick. And I liked Marvy because they were thinner and really, really vibrant and intense, okay? And, so much for that. Because they're not going to be, something re-inkers are still around, but they're not going to be around for much longer. The re-inkers that you can still find out there. The pads are gone, but yeah, we'll be looking around for other things, for other colors. But okay. So that being said, one of my go-to black inks these days, when I'm not working on something that requires brilliance, but if I'm working on matte papers, okay, that fence is still a little bit juicy. I'm like smearing it around a lot. I really like the hybrid combo dye ink and oil-based pigment combination in this one right here. It's just the Moon and the Maker. Now there's other, I'm not aware of too many places that have the hybrid ink like that, but on matte papers, I feel it really gives me a really good impression. So you get the benefit of the thickness of, a lot of pigment inks, and you get the penetration of the dye-based ink in it. Okay, so it will absorb a little bit easier into certain types of surfaces. So, things like Deanna's background papers, matte papers like that, or, I have the wood grain paper and stuff like that. Those types of papers I really like. The black hybrid ink and how it gives me a really dark impression on those pre-printed papers, which of course have printer inks all over it. So even though they might be matte, it is still printed over. VersaFine Clear would be really fantastic on this too, all those matte papers as well. But those are a couple of the ones that I'm using a lot of. Let me see, what did you say there? Open up a few of my Marvy pads and they were toast. Yeah. So Chris, okay, we ask this every time it comes up, but it was the crafters foam, was it, that people were using to, where the pad is crumbled on those Marvy pads? People were using that crafting foam or something like that. I forgot what foam they were using to redo their pad, right? I think I'm getting that right. I don't think I'm thinking about the I might be thinking about the Clear Snap Colorbox stylus tools as well, but I thought people might have been redoing the surface of their Marvy pads too with some sort of foam. But yeah, as far as the Marvy inks, or you can get, there's other types of blank foam pads too. Okay, if you can see, I'm kind of going on the top edge of this snowy portion of the fence right here with my acrylic paint pen. To give it more lighting like that. Now it's not reflecting anywhere. I'm thinking about having like a moon rising from, in back of these trees or something like that. But I was telling someone that's kind of new to scenic stamping. I forgot if she was new to stamping in general, but I was telling her that, for most of my colors in dye-based inks, I don't use them to stamp out my images in. I just use those inks to color with, okay? Like yellow or something like, you know what I mean? Or red. I never stamp something out in those colors. Light blue, you know, even like a cloud, I usually wouldn't use a really light blue. Maybe, but for most of the colors in dye-based ink form that I'm using, I just use it to color my scenes with, and I put it on whatever applicator, so I don't need a pad for that. So I was just telling this customer, I've told people like this over the years too. I just said, hey, you know, if you're putting together some sort of a collection of inks, I might have even told Sharita when she started stamping, but I just say, if you're not doing a lot of stamping out in certain colors, then just get the re-inker for them. You know, you get a lot more ink in a re-inker bottle than a pad, unless you get, you know, you always get a re-inker and the pad too. But you know, if you want to, you know, get a really good collection or a selection of colors, you can just go for, you know, black, whatever, hybrid, VersaFine Clair, dye-based ink or something like that. And then, I don't know, maybe a couple other pads. You know, I stamp things out in browns sometimes, like dark browns and stuff like that. But, you know, if you're, especially, or, you know, if you're getting new pads or switching out old ones or something like that, just get the, you know, just get the re-inkers for them. And then you won't even need to worry about the pad anymore, you know, because you're just using the bottle of ink. So I have like a whole bunch of inks, like on my desk here, you know, like these. I just keep these right here. I have these ones right here. And they're not to re-ink necessarily my pads, although I might have done it on some of those colors, but most of the times I'm just squeezing them out onto a sponge or something like that. And coloring whatever I'm coloring with them. Chris, were your Marvy pads, do you know if they were the ones with the gold embossing on the top, or the stickers like that? The stickers were a few years newer. But yeah, a lot of my gold embossing ones are you know, they're dying. If they haven't already gone. I'm personally, I'm probably not going to apply that foam to it, because I'm doing these videos and I should be, you know, utilizing media in general that's still available out there. I don't want to be doing something that's like, oh, here we're stamping on this, you know, this wood grain paper, by the way, which you can't get, and okay, let's see, you know, grab your Marvy pad, oh, by the way, which aren't available either, you know, that type of thing. Okay, so adding in some of that white ink on those smaller trees in the background. The larger trees, there's much more space for, you know, that pastel pencil like that. And again, this pastel pencil is just not working down in here because it's not applying over the top of the white brilliance ink. As a matter of fact, when I tried to apply some right here to get a little bit of variation, I dug up the application of white so you can see it's actually dark right in there. So we won't do any of that. So if I wanted to add a little bit more opacity and lightness with the white, you know, we can do that in here. But I added a little bit more in here. But right in here, like right there, it's still a little bit wet. You can see where it's smeared. So I'll add some more of that later on. I don't like to heat up these papers too much because you can already see where it's getting kind of ripply like this. So I'd like to let it air right now. I am going to mount this on something else though, you know, nice and firm. and it'll flatten it out. But I don't like to make it all kind of, go too, get too crazy with the bowing and all that. Okay, let's add a few little highlights on here too. And then I think I want to do that small moon up here. Like if I had a smaller hole punch, I would use it. I have one around here somewhere, but let's just go ahead and do this one. And we'll have this kind of rising from behind those trees. And I'll have to see if I can work around the tree, somehow. Let's do this right here. Maybe like that, huh? I don't want this like right on the edge of that right there. So let's go down. Let's see, where is it? Right there. Let's go down a little bit. How about like that? I wonder if that tree's wet. Oh, that's not here. Yeah. Yeah, as I was saying that, I was saying, Sharita probably bought all. She didn't want just the re-inkers for it. The pads are really good because you can reference, especially if the colors on the pad itself, it's easy to reference the colors, for convenience sake. Well, the thing about the re-inkers for me too, that's not just the you know, cost savings or something like that, but it's also, I have a lot of pads on my desk here and they're just stacked up, so I'm like running out of space, for additional pads where I can get like a group of 20 re-inkers in a space like that. Okay. So it's a little bit of like a crafting desk real estate issue for me with the re-inkers too, which might have been, one of the, at least equal impetus for just buying the re-inkers for me. Okay, vibrant, but could be transparent. Yeah. Yeah, the Marvy inkers. That's what I have a lot of too, Chris. And I'm going to have a lot of those for a long time. Hello, Military Mom. Good to see ya. Yeah, the Clear Snap Stylus tool. So people were using that crafting sponge. Linda would be able to tell you. Did she tell you there? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Gorilla Glue here. I know Linda redoes her does her stylus tool tips. Yeah, I'm with you, Sharita. So yeah, that's what I tend to tell people, with when it comes to the ink choices. Kind of having the basics established, the foundational, tones. You want to have maybe a range of, blue tones. You have light blue, medium blue, dark blue, like a lighter green, darker green, and it doesn't, it's not like a huge amount either. It's like 15 colors or so. And then from there, yeah, for me, it's all about, the colors that I like. And then, of course, with dye-based inks. Okay, so I'm adding in some of this lighting now that we have this moon in here. So, like these trees off to the side here, what I'll do is, as it moves like farther away from the moon, I'll have less lighting on them. So, which means like fewer dots or something like that. But the more light around the closer trees like this, okay? We'll do it on these trees down here too. Like that. All right. I don't know, you bring some of these trees out a little bit more if you want to. About like that. And then let's put some kind of that shimmering light on the snow in this lower portion. Okay, it's going to look kind of weird right now. It might be a little bit too much, but I'm going to do this overall kind of snowfall over the whole thing here afterwards too. Let's do it like this too. I'll have a little bit of a cluster right here, a little bit more of a cluster right here, and then down here, as opposed to doing it over the whole thing, okay? And see, I'm kind of clustering that right in there. And then, as I go away from that cluster, I spread my, placement of these dots a little bit more, so it's going from a little bit lighter to darker like that, okay? Now, I mean, chances are you'd have, kind of shining, throughout, so you can put a few, here and there as well, like that. And let's do something here too. Let's put that lighting coming out of the cabin. Like that. All right. And then let's do the thing that I've been waiting to do on here, and did all this preliminary work just for this one technique of the splatter painting. So the trip back to childhood, for 10 seconds. All right. Now the clouds are somewhere around here, we could say, hey, they got the full moon. Where's the, that snow falling from? Yeah, it's falling from the clouds out of the picture here. All right. And again, I think I'll bring in some extra little touches, not too much in here, but of white pigment ink, like maybe around in here, like have some clouds coming out from behind these trees or something like that. And I'd probably put him in a little bit of fog too. And at the base of like these fences, I usually like to do it at the far end of the fence, just to kind of vary it so you get something a little bit crisp and a little bit darker like that. Oh, here. Something that I completely forgot to do here. I don't know if it really needs it. Let me do it on this one because this is a little bit drier now, but I'll add just a little bit of shading here. So we at the top of the slope lighter and it transitions to darker like that. But if you want to kind of model it a little bit more, like around some of these lines in here at the edge of the water like this, or whatever, ice, you can add this back in, because sometimes when you start adding in like pastel pencil and white pigment ink in here, everything kind of gets a little bit softer, but you can add in like targeted shadows in here like this, and a little bit of a crisper type of application, or more specific application. In other words, like this little area right here, you have this tree kind of casting a little bit of a shadow here, so you can come down like that. It's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter down here. You can anchor your cabin like this a little bit more. If you want to darken in some of these areas in the cabin, you can. It's, there's little touches like that that you can do or not. I think it looked fine without it too. Or here's some of those rocks in there that kind of got covered up with some of that white pigment ink. You can kind of reclaim some of their darkness like that if you want to. Okay, now in here specifically, you have these fences that are just kind of sitting here. And if you add in a little bit of an anchoring shadow, maybe like this. Like these fences, they'd probably be coming down like this a little bit. And then you can put a little bit of a shadow like this. I don't want to put in too much because I'm just kind of faking where the shadow might be. As long as it kind of looks like it kind of might be like that. These ones would probably be going, you know, like this a little bit more. So, oh, and here's our little kid. It's kind of like the angle of the shadow is kind of like this. So it'd be going like this right down here. So I just kind of have this a little bit darker around them, then I have it dissipate like that. Okay, so it's darker and then lighter down here. And we can put it around the sled too. Like that. So it kind of anchors everything a little bit more, doesn't it? At the base of the cabin, just a touch like that. Or the trees. Now see, the shadows would be getting cast much more here, but the thing is that it would intrude with the silhouette of this figure right here, so, you know, not everything has to be, like, literal, you know what I mean? Because you can do anything you want in here, so, as the creators of your worlds. Okay, let's see here. Okay, the leaf dye that, okay, yeah, and it is the Gorilla Glue. The Gorilla Glue works well, but it is a little bit more difficult to replace. Oh, that's a good thing then, right? So it works really well, but it just grips so much then that it's hard to remove. I guess you can remove it with like a like a box matte knife or something like that, maybe. Stylus tools and refute. The stylus tools those are beautiful tools for sure. Yeah, the stylus tool was the only, I think, ink applicator. Of course, they meant for it to be used as stamping like their shapes around, but that was the most ergonomic tool ever, I think, in the stamping industry or crafting industry. Everything else is like makeup brushes, you know, designed for something else. But that, you know, those Clear Snap products were so awesome because they were making those dyes specifically for what they were intended, you know, to be, you know, exactly the way they were intended to be used, not repurposing something else like a peg thing, but they put like a, you know, Velcro on it for something else where you're applying something like this. You know, the stylus tool was, you know, it's meant to be used like a pencil or something like that, you know. So super ergonomic. If people don't know what the stylus tool is, these were like the kits that they used to sell like that, but the ones that we specifically used for inking had these little tips like this, and I typically went with the leaf or the oval shape like that, and they were meant to be used like here's a heart one like that, and a whatever, like a shield or something like that. But what people did was they used these for the shapes that they were whatever die cut out for, so a heart or something like that. So you would stamp a heart, but no one used these kits like this at all. Everyone bought them, but no one used them, I found, because no one wanted to be stamping these kind of geometric shapes. You know, there wasn't any purpose for it. But I started using them because I went to the store and I was using the tonal applicator, and they said, "Hey, have you ever tried these out?" And I applied it, and I thought, oh my God, that works like fantastic, and it's like so comfortable. So I started using these, and I really loved it. And used them for years, but, you know, Clear Stamp went out of business, how long has it been? 6, 7 years or something like that? So, yeah, they just, unfortunately, with, you know, those companies gone, so went you know, and some of these companies leave, or they stop making certain things. Sometimes we're losing the best incarnation, in my opinion, of certain types of media and or applicators like that. So, but you know, for me, I don't know what I went back to like the Stone Age, you know, paper towels and cotton balls and stuff like that, which, you know, for me work, but it's not quite as ergonomic. It might be a little bit more crude in the hand feeling, you know, than something a little bit more graceful, maybe. And see, something like this too, I was able to apply, let me see right here, certain types of inks too, like even like pigment ink, like this. I could apply it like this in here. I don't know if I can still do it here. This thing's like, but I used it for its edge too, a little bit. Okay, my ink is a little bit dry, but yeah, I can get in there and manipulate things pretty well. It's hard to see on here because I already applied it, you know, on there, but you can use the edge of that right there. So it's going on relatively crisp, but it's also soft too, so you get the best of both kind of consistencies, I guess, when using something like this. You know, there's other types of sponges out there. There's the wedge style makeup sponges that people used to use before all these other things came out and then were discontinued. But you still have some of those sponges out there like that. But, you know, you're holding a sponge as opposed to this nice tool like that. So, you know, yeah. You know, I don't think about it at all, but I do miss it probably. Let me see. Did I say hello to Caroline? Hello, Caroline. Today, the spooky tree on the art foamy is on the art. Yeah, yeah. So the trees are on the Art Foamy's site. It's this size right here, which is already in the Halloween set. This is like the size of the larger one in the rubber stamp nature set. And the Art Foamy larger tree, which is really the killer application of those Art Foamies when it comes to Stampscapes. But I had this one made where it's about this much bigger. Okay, so it's wider. Okay. Because I used this one, I thought, you know, we need it like bigger. But, you know, not a huge portion, but, you know, like, I don't know, whatever it was, 10% bigger or something like that than this one right here. This is our test one that she sent me. So the other one's like 7.5 inches, I think, wide or something like that. And this one's more like a 6.5. So, yeah, those are on the website. I think she posted them about a week ago or so. Yeah. Let's see. Get the range of colors you want with distress inks. Oh yeah, the distress inks are really great, but they're not going to be the distress inks. My favorite application of distress inks are the ones that are a little bit more aged looking, so they're duller and lighter. Okay, not duller in terms of interest, but they're just, you know, if you want to make something look aged, you kind of make it look a little bit weathered and older, and that would be on the intensity scale, it would be just less. Okay, but I think in the distress inks, just so that they can sell pads, they just sell brighter colors under the name of the distress line, where it's not that so distressed anymore. You know, you want a bright red, you know. I think if they just didn't have Tim Holtz's name on them, they probably wouldn't sell. So they don't want to come up with a completely new line, I don't think, at this point in time. So I think they've just added brighter tones to the distress line. And other people can answer that more than me, but I thought I saw some brighter tones just being released like that, and I understood it. It's like the seashells. In the past, Adirondacks were the things that were the really big line of colors from Ranger at the time, but then the seashells weren't selling at all, and Sea Brights, so they got rid of those two lines and they just incorporated them in with the Adirondack line. So seashells turned to Adirondack Lights, and then, you know, the Adirondacks were all discontinued. Let's see. Oh, Gorilla Glue. That's tough stuff, huh? I've never used Gorilla Glue. Two-sided tape. I remember people mentioning that double-sided tape on that. So, okay, so sometimes these tips right here wear out. Okay, and if you ever get these, sometimes you can find these still on like eBay. But the foam might be hard, so you can replace this foam on here. And some people were mentioning like double stick tape or something like that, but I always thought, if I'm adding it down like that, is that going to stick? But apparently it does, so. But you can just cut these out, and it doesn't have to be a perfect little oval like that, you know? But if you can find these, that's really good. But if you get these tips like this that kind of crust, you know, they get crusty because they're foam, what you do is you replace this part, so you retain this portion of it though, and then apply that new foam to it. I can't tell you how many rip tips and stuff like that over the years. We toss these out right here, you know, thinking it was going to be around forever, but I probably could have had like, I don't know, because I used to use them in workshops and make and takes and demonstrations like that. These tips can lasted me 20 years, but if you get someone new to it and they start scrubbing like that, it can rip the tip really fast. So we probably went through 300 tips like that, maybe more over the years, you know, with, you know, as much usage that we got out of them. And some would just, you know, you might use them in 10 workshops or something like that, and they just start wearing out. But I wish I would have kept them, needless to say. I didn't know ClearSnap was just going to be kind of out of the picture. And I thought someone said someone bought ClearSnap too, so, and that they were going to still make everything, but I thought that doesn't make sense to me, because ClearSnap didn't go out of business because they were just selling stuff hand over fist. So why would some other company just, you know, inherit them, not have all their connections and everything like that, and suddenly we're going to make everything the way that, you know, that they were before. So, and they didn't, because I don't know of anyone that has the ClearSnap line. So anyway, going big. Oh, would you consider going big with polymer stamps? What do you mean by that, Linda? You mean like a wider selection of the line in polymer? Because Sweet Poppy has been licensed to make the polymer stamps, and they ship anywhere in the world except to the Netherlands, which has, you know, I have an agreement with the, you know, my seller in the Netherlands as far as Stampscapes stamps. But the polymer though, they don't have the full line, but they have an open kind of you know, they have an open offer to make any of those stamps into polymer though. But a lot of their stamps though that they release in polymer, they're designed to go with their stencils. So some of the larger stamps, if you mean in terms of the size of the stamps, in polymer, I don't know. But yeah, the Sweet Poppy polymer Stampscapes often are fitting within those windows of their stencils. So like F size, you know, and below, and a lot of probably around the DE sizes of Stampscape stamps in general, like that. Yeah, the seashells, those were really great inks right there. So here's the Adirondack Re-Inker Peach Bellini. And here's the seashells, Ocean Aqua. And then Ocean Aqua turned into the Adirondack Lights Aqua instead of Ocean Aqua. But you can see, oh, here it is right here. Seashells, Ocean Aqua, and Adirondack Lights Aqua, you know. But these were fantastic foundational inks that I used all the time. And I started off, back when we were only doing, in my workshops, dye-based inks on glossy cardstock, that technique, I had everyone start off with just like a, you know, a little puddle of ocean aqua or ocean aqua, and then they would apply it with their stylus tools on the background. And then they would just build up their Marvy inks over the top of that. And the aqua provided such a really fantastic liquid and thick foundation that everyone's scenes basically blended just fine. It was almost impossible to do unblended, applications of the darker tones in there because they'd just be, it was really easy and slick to move those secondary colors over the top of a layer of the thicker style of Ocean Aqua. Okay, so that being said, so Ocean Aqua and Adirondacks are not around anymore, but the equivalent to all that is, if you're just only talking about Ranger inks, it would be something like the Tumbled Glass Distress ink, and you just get the re-inker for that. As a matter of fact, I had it, but I used it all up. But here's like the Distress inks in different tones, so this one's like a medium blue, and this one's like a darker one, but you can get all these different colors like that. Or in the Memento, it would be the equivalent of, I can't remember the name. What is that lightest blue in Memento? I don't know, I already forgot. Oh, wait, is it right here? Here it is right here. Summer Sky. So, you just get a lighter tone, and it's pretty much the equivalent of those things like the seashells or something like that. If you're doing it, I have a gazillion videos on dye-based inks on glossy paper, but just set a nice foundation coat with those thicker styles of inks that are nice and light. Anyway, let's see. Relatively fast cards like this. You're just working in white and black media. I guess you can use other tones, like if you had other colors of variations of Brilliance ink or something like that, like a light blue in here would look pretty cool to add, maybe in some areas. Or if I had a really light, I don't know what the lightest color of Brilliance ink would be. I don't think they would have something like really super light. But you can add a little bit of warmth in here on the surface like that of the moon. Some people like to give the moon a little bit of warmth. You might be able to use, a Krylon workable fixative and spray seal this, okay? You don't have to, but it could lock down the where'd it go? The pastel pencil a little bit more if you spray seal this. But if you spray seal this in a workable fixative, it might give this surface a little bit of texture where you can add in a little bit more pastel pencil on certain areas if you want to bring a little bit of warmth, let's say a little bit of hint of warmth into that moon. You can use a pastel pencil up there or something like that, or maybe even a colored pencil. I don't know. And then bring some of that warmth down in here. I wouldn't do a lot of it. I just put a little hint of it here and there. But stuff like that would be little kind of minor tweaks on there that could be, pretty fun to explore on these types of papers like that. But I think just the Brilliance black and white really provide kind of a nice option for these other types of surfaces like this. Like I said, the Brilliance dries on here just fine. And I'm not sure if you used a VersaFine Clair or like a Hero Hues Unicorn White or something like that. They're oil-based. If it would absorb, transfer, and dry on these types of metallic iridescent cardstocks like that. Some of them might, because like I said, some of these might be a little bit more porous than other ones. I don't know. But you can test it out. And if it doesn't dry immediately, you can try to heat set it or just let it set overnight and see if it absorbs a little bit into the surface. And you might have a little bit more luck with that. Okay, so I was thinking of, instead of foam, to make it a polymer stamp. Oh, you're talking about the tree or something like that, Linda? I don't know about that. The polymer, let me think about that one. I guess it The polymer we just went... Polymer is just like the foam, though, I guess. The foam I don't think is a good idea to use with solvent inks. I think it would just absorb in there. But that would be the same with... I'm just thinking out loud here. The clear stamps you're not supposed to use with solvent inks, right? Did someone say that's not true? You just have to clean it off right away? I can't remember. Anyway, points to ponder. Or I'll try to look for some of these other types of things. But yeah, find Linda on the, if anyone has questions about like stuff like that, foam types of tips on the stylus tools. Or if you don't have her contact information, check out Facebook and the Stampscapes Facebook 2 group on there. And I don't know, Linda, you got all kinds of like different information up there. But yeah, I think, did someone, I don't know if it, I'm thinking of imagining it, but did someone post like photos of the process of that too? I don't remember. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for checking out the live here. Glad you like them. I'll get these formatted too, and they'll look nice, nice and framed off. I might do like a, little word stamps on here too to really finish these off nicely. So I think the just on, if we're just talking about set number 52 and 53, like the piece on this one would look kind of cool right there. I don't know, this one right here, Let It Snow or something like that. Warm Wishes, I don't know, something like that up here. I think that would fit right in there, and I'll matte these off with some, probably a double matte. Hope you have a great rest of evening and weekend. And, oh, one thing that I'll be doing is I'll be going and checking out some, I'm going to go leaf hunting on Sunday for a few days. I keep covering that spider image up there. I'm going to go leaf hunting in the Eastern Sierras for a couple nights. So we're going to be going and looking for color if we can find it. So Eastern Sierras, there should be we should be able to catch the tail end of the fall color out there. So I'll show some photographs when I get back on my Flickr page and Facebook maybe. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of evening. Thanks again.